Re:Zero, across its 4 seasons, has had 2 different directors. Masaharu Watanabe directed Season 1 and 2, and Masahiro Shinohara directed Season 3 and 4. They've both done things a little differently and left their own unique mark on the anime. A director's guiding vision and philosophy steer the overall work and give it a distinct identity. What do they decide to focus on? When do they decide to break convention? Personally, I think the first season has the best direction overall. But when I put up a poll here, it came in second to the currently airing 4th season. There's a lot in Shinohara's directorial style that people are latching onto. So let's talk about Watanabe, Shinohara, and Re:Zero's directing overall. To be clear, this isn't a competition. I just want to look at how 2 different people work with the same material, and discuss some of the techniques and stylistic flourishes they use, their major differences, and what they share in common as well. This is Re:Zero, so of course the best place to start is how the death scenes are depicted. When Watanabe was at the helm, a lot of Subaru's death scenes weren't as graphic as you might remember them being. I don't mean to say that they weren't graphic, they were. Just that on average there's a lot more implied than shown. In Season 1 and 2, many of the death scenes involve Subaru slowly realizing he's been wounded, really playing up the tension and obscuring the full extent of his injuries with shadows or blur. They tend to focus on POV or reaction shots rather than the wounds themselves. It's the shark in Jaws, right? Sometimes the best way of showing something is to not show much of it at all. That being said, a death like getting eaten by 1,000 rabbits obviously bucks that trend, completely indulging in the violence for an uncomfortably long amount of time, to properly convey how horrifying it is. It's just that this style of death is rarer and used more for emphasis, to make it come across as especially brutal. But even that leaves much to the imagination. On the other hand, Shinohara tends to show violence much clearer and lingers for longer. The choking plus heart attack death in Season 3 is comparable to the rabbits in terms of how long it makes the audience stick with it for a painfully uncomfortable amount of time. And it's only his 2nd episode. Season 4, though, is when I think this becomes more apparent as part of his directing style, because even when a death is fast, there's a much greater focus on the gore. Look at this close-up of his stomach shot open, on full display, versus the way Elsa gutting his stomach is framed so that she blocks the wound from view. We actually get a great point of comparison with Season 2's Kiss of Death and Season 4's Miasma Cave, because both have a color filter over them that washes out the scene underneath. The Kiss of Death, where Subaru's body is horribly mangled after being chomped on by rabbits, heavily relies on POV shots and jump cuts, showing us the sequence in intermittent bursts. The filter is one of many methods used to obscure the damage until the end. The cave scene, on the other hand, shows everything, much more explicitly, the entire way through. Besides the filter, there's no attempt to obscure any of it. It even removes the filter for the shot of Aridna getting cleaved. It returns, but then by the time we get to Patrosh, it's gone again. Patrosh eating Subaru even does something new for the series, where it cuts to black as she lunges, then cuts back to show him being eaten. You think it's just going to be implied, but then it shocks you with the gory reality anyway. It almost feels like a deliberate subversion from Watanabe's style. Brutal, sick shit, man. It's great. Just to reiterate, Season 1 and 2 get very graphic, too. I even think his chewed up body is gnarlier than what we see in the cave. It's more about the way it all unfolds. Personally, I do miss the way that deaths used to play out, but I also really appreciate the boldness of Shinohara's approach, and I think it works very well at amping up the horror Subaru is experiencing without his memories. Directing is about a lot more than spectacle, though. In fact, more often, it's about elevating what could be mundane into something more compelling, injecting life into the little things. I think in general, Shinohara tends to be more straightforward in his approach, while Watanabe tends to think outside the box. Take the scene where Subaru retells the Oni Who Cried fable to Rom. There's a cutaway to the sunsetting sky turning a blend of pink and blue. Rom in the window's reflection looks like Rem because she's interpreting the story to be about her relationship to her sister. And the whole time, Subaru is reenacting the story with the pen and the spoon in his hands. In filmmaking, this is called business. You're giving something for the character to do with props or the environment that, if you're really smart, reflects what they're talking about. It helps make dialogue scenes less boring to watch. That's not to be confused with blocking, which is where the characters are in the space and how they move around it. But this scene is an example of good blocking too. Rom walks around the room throughout the conversation. And she physically interacts with Subaru in a way that complements the question she asks. I may have talked about this scene more than anyone else. It's a good scene. People should talk about this scene more. Another example of making a dialogue scene lively is, to no one's surprise, from Zero. The way shadows and light are used to reflect the mood is impeccable. There's darkness creeping in when Subaru loses all hope. Rays of light when Rem restores the hope. We get cutaways to the environment, flocks of birds flying by. It's got so much sauce. I'm drowning in sauce. By comparison, a similar scene with Amelia in Season 4 is a lot more straightforward, with less of those artistic flourishes. There's nothing wrong with it, please don't kill me, it's just a lot more muted. Now, here's one of my favorite techniques. Season 1, in particular, heavily uses Dutch angles to create a sense of unease, like when Subaru returns to Amelia in Arc 3. Look, it's like half the shots here are canted. It tells your brain that what's happening here is very bad and very wrong. Another favorite? The wide-angle lens. This is kind of the whole reason I even made this video in the first place. I just wanted to gush about the wide-angle lens. All throughout the season, there are moments that play around with lens distortion, exaggerating or warping space. I'm personally very fond of the dolly zoom when Subaru looks in the mirror at the mansion, which makes us feel like we're dissociating along with him. It's not that Shinohara doesn't do this, it's that Watanabe's are more deliberately exaggerated. Look at her little traumatized face, I love it. This shot is perfect. The space around him is all distorted and disorienting. And look at all that headroom. He's so small in the frame. He's isolated, in over his head. We know exactly how he's feeling just from this shot alone. Just amazing. Shinohara has used both wide angles and dolly zooms, to great effect too. But in general, the camera feels like it has more of a physical presence in Watanabe's ReZero. I realize that talking about a camera here is a little weird, but you know, the fake camera, you know what I mean. Okay, so this is far more obvious for people to notice, but Season 3 and 4 tend to have a faster pace than the prior two seasons. The early seasons leave a bit more breathing room to take in the scenes, whereas the later seasons are pretty breakneck. Truthfully, pacing is kind of boring to talk about though, so I just want to give one example I think is interesting. When amnesiac Subaru wakes up after a brutal death, he gets up and runs away, pushing Beatrice away in the process. It's really quick. You'd probably expect an insert or reaction shot of him slapping Beatrice away. Not doing that is jarring. I've seen some people highlight this to say that Shinohara is speeding through everything and doesn't emphasize key beats as much as he should. But I disagree with that here. In the miasma cave, we get an insert shot of him breaking the lantern, and it even slows down to emphasize the moment, putting a spotlight on Subaru's aggression. The decision to not do that here is very clearly intentional. By quickly brushing past it and keeping it entirely in a wide shot, there's a distance from these characters. It's like they aren't even there. He doesn't care about them. There's no time for that shit. He just needs to get the hell out of here. Notice how we do get a close-up of Amelia touching him. He died because someone pushed him from behind. We don't cut closer to him pushing Beatrice away, but we do cut closer to Amelia touching his back, because that's what matters to him at this moment. I do think Shinohara's seasons sometimes have a problem speeding through certain beats, but this is a pretty lousy example to me, because it's very clearly motivated. I think it's an example of the faster pace leading to something new and different. I've talked a lot about the differences, but now I want to talk about the continued motifs and stylistic decisions that are present in both of their work. Immediately what comes to mind for me is the motif of characters reflected in each other's eyes. This happens so much in the first two seasons, and serves as great imagery that reflects, literally, how characters perceive themselves or how others perceive them. Even though it's not quite as common, we still see it crop up in Shinohara seasons. There's a perfect use of it when Aridna is questioning Subaru's identity on the balcony. We even get a reflection from a bird's eye, which is so damn good. Both directors really play into the emotion on Subaru's face, twisting and contorting it in ugly ways, which yields some amazing results. Not everyone is willing to make their protagonist this unsightly, but I'm glad they do because it does such a great job at visually illustrating his state of mind. There's Subaru's fight with Amelia as a prime example, but amnesiac Subaru's faces of pure anguish are hard to top. This is a smaller one, but when Subaru learns that Rem has been erased by gluttony, he's backlit, partially silhouetted against an entirely overexposed background. When he learns Julius got erased, it's the same thing. There's no reason Shinohara had to do that again, but he chose to repeat that imagery. I like that bit of consistency. It helps make these moments feel incredibly isolating. He's in front of a white void. It's like the outside world ceases to even exist. Both Watanabe and Shinohara do this technique several times throughout their seasons, in negative and positive situations, making us focus solely on the emotion of the moment and not whatever's happening in the background. I also really like how Regulus, in his final moments, has his body all broken and deformed in a way that makes him resemble Betelgeuse in his final moments, that weird quadrupedal form he's in. It's neat to see Shinohara continue that imagery with the Sin Archbishops. Now this is a really interesting one to me, the use of TV static or digital-looking glitch effects. We see quite a bit during Echidna's trials in particular. Shinohara really leans into this far more in Season 4. When Subaru loses control of his body, there's static and a color calibration screen. It feels like Subaru, as someone from Earth, is perceiving this like switching off a TV channel. A fantasy show using TV glitches makes ReZero almost veer into science fiction, this blending of Earth and fantasy, which I really love. There's a vibe in the first arc in particular that's more Marty McFly at the Renaissance Fair than the traditional reborn into another world. And I like that even though Subaru's not walking around with a tracksuit and a cell phone anymore, we still see this kind of bleed over from Earth. I know this was a pretty short video, and by no means comprehensive. There's a lot I didn't cover, so I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. Any techniques I didn't talk about, any specific scenes you really like the direction of, I'm here for all of it. If you talk about wide-angle lenses, I'm probably just gonna heart your comment because I love them so much. Also, yes, I will be making a Season 4 arc analysis video. I just need to wait until it's over, because I like to be able to take it all in its totality, rewatch it and pick up all the details. Otherwise, I don't think I could even make it. So, it is coming. If you want to support me, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, any of that stuff. Live strong, okay?